Barry Silverberg, Director of the Center for Nonprofit Studies at Austin Community College. Welcome to Civil Society, where we explore issues affecting our communal well-being through a nonprofit lens. We're a proud partner of ACCTV. My guest today is Bruce Elfant, Travis County Tax Assessor-Collector and Voter Registrar. For the past 7 years, prior to that, Bruce served 20 years as Travis County Constable. Bruce is the epitome of a public servant. His dedication to the citizens of Travis County is self-evident by his tireless efforts to get all people to vote. A passionate advocate of civic engagement, Bruce has been instrumental in leading Travis County to have the highest voter registration rate among Texas urban counties. As constable, Bruce helped establish the Veterans Court, which places veterans in recovery programs instead of jail. He's been recognized by many organizations for his civic and community service. You can find more detail on this episode's website. I invited Bruce to join me to talk about public service, his own experiences, its joys and tribulations, and the critical work of his office. Welcome, Bruce.
Thank you.
On your website, among the other things, among the vision and mission of the organization, under operation, it says, we're not brain surgeons, but we're a big operation. So let's start with explaining what humor has to do with Travis County.
Well, humor is very important in government. If you don't have a sense of humor, it's really hard to work in government. But the tax office is kind of the economic engine for county government and for all governments here in Travis County, because we collect property taxes for 130 taxing entities in Travis County, including ACC. $4.5 billion comes into our office and gets dispersed to these entities to support public services. If you drive, you have to come to our office because we issue vehicle registrations and titles. And of course, if you vote, and I hope everybody votes, we're the voter registrar for Travis County.
So you're a pretty busy place.
We're a very busy place. We have more people coming to our office than any other government agency in Travis County.
You mentioned before about it being the steak and potatoes of government. Do you want to expand on that?
Sure. I mean, it's just nothing fancy. But we are tasked to collect taxes and issue registration renewals and register voters, and those are very essential services for Travis County citizens. Like I said, it's not fancy, but it's important, and we collect over $4.5 billion a year in taxpayer dollars, so it's important that we do it securely and we do it efficiently.
And we'll explore a little bit of that more later, but let me talk about Bruce. So what are you proudest of as a public servant?
Oh, there's a number of things that I'm proud of. I mean, I think about my early years as constable. We were the first constable's office in the country to set up an online system where people can check on protective orders, family violence protective orders. When protective orders are issued, it's a very dangerous time for the victim. And we were able to instantly notify the police department, the sheriff, and the victim and the county attorney's office immediately when a protective order was served. And this is back in the 90s when we weren't as advanced electronically. And so we're very proud of that, and we certainly saved some lives over that time. So that's one instance that I'm very proud of.
Well, in my 20 years in Travis County, it appears that one of your emphasis has been the whole computerization, more accessibility of, lessening the lines at the various offices.
Absolutely. We have 1.4 million people in Travis County, and every one of them has to come to our office at one time or another. And we're really encouraging people who are paying property taxes to pay electronically. We're encouraging people who need to get their registration renewals to do it online. And we're trying to get the legislature to pass a bill to allow people to register to vote online. It's certainly more secure and it's a lot more efficient. We can save a lot of tax dollars by not having to manually process all that money and the voter cards. On the voter deadline, we received 40,000 paper applications last year, and we had to manually process them. And in this day and age, that's just crazy.
Yep. So again, returning to Bruce. So why did you get involved in this whole arena? What led you to public service and your interest in it?
Well, when I was young, in my early 20s, I worked for the State Attorney General's office in the planning division, and I got to come in contact with a lot of really important issues for our citizens here in the state. After Hurricane Alicia came through and devastated Galveston Island, I was tasked to work on the Open Beaches Act to protect the beaches. We worked on nursing home reform issues. The conditions in many nursing homes in Texas were just horrific, and the state didn't have the regulations and the guidelines in place, and to the extent they did, they weren't being enforced. We worked on healthcare fraud. We worked on a number of issues like that it was just so exciting to be able to take an issue and figure out what we can do to try to make things better for our citizens.
Interesting. So, to someone unfamiliar with what you do, not the work of the offices, okay, what do you do as the voter registrar and the tax assessor? Because you have a lot of people doing the counting. I'm assuming you're not doing counting of the money.
No, they don't let me near the money.
That's a smart thing.
It is a very smart thing. I'm the administrator. We have 180 people in the tax office. It's an important that we have strong management.
It's a large operation.
And that we, yes, absolutely, and that we have 3, 5, and 10-year goals. Where do we want this office to be in that period of time? It's important that we work with the Commissioner's Court so we have the funding to be able to do those things. It's important that we work with the state legislature to make sure that the legislative infrastructure is there to allow us to move into the future and become more efficient and effective. So I'm working with so many outside entities to try to further our interests. I've worked closely with the Tax Assessors Association on a number of tax issues.
Let's talk about voting. And this is the season we're all focused on the primaries and so forth. For somebody sitting home and not sure if they're going to vote because for whatever reason or other they're frustrated, what do you say to them?
This is our democracy. I mean, people fought and died for the right to vote, and that's not an abstract thing. Voting just really severely impacts our ability to do things in Travis County. I came to Travis County in 1976, and when I got here, there was absolutely no traffic. No traffic. There wasn't a traffic light in town that took you more than a cycle to get through. Today, we're one of the most congested cities in the country, and during that 40 years, we either didn't have public policy people proposing effective solutions, or we didn't have citizens giving their input, and we certainly didn't have people voting when bond issues came up. And then we had other people trying to make the perfect the enemy of the good. And we need our citizenry to be much more engaged. If we want to do something about traffic, everybody has to be engaged, come to the table, come up with a plan that we can put out to the voters, and then the voters have to be engaged in passing it.
So what is your office doing to, I know there's a lot of effort on voter registration. I know you're very involved with the college and trying to getting students registered. What is your office doing to promote greater voter engagement?
We have a number of civic engagement programs, and I'll start with the high schools. Our high schools are big partners because to the extent that we're going to get people registered and voting, it's going to happen when they're 18. The research says that if you get them at 18, they're more likely to make it a lifelong habit. And if you miss them at 18, they're much less likely to really ever engage.
Interesting.
And so we have a First Vote civic engagement program with the high schools partnership with the League of Women Voters, and we go in and do an hour curriculum, and it can be in a classroom or it can be in a school gymnasium. And if there are any teachers out there listening, call me and we would be happy to set up a program for them. So we do the First Vote program. All the principals are volunteer deputy registrars, and they've committed to doing at least 2 voter registration events a year on their campuses to try to get their students registered. We have a video contest, a PSA contest, to come up with the best messaging for the importance of registering and voting. And I'm a 60-something-year-old guy, and when I tell people it's important to register and vote, the young people just roll their eyes at me. So it's going to be a lot more effective if their peers are telling them why they think it's important to register and vote. And these PSAs are very powerful, and so we use them. We had a mural contest this year. And we're very excited that the winning mural is going to be on permanent display at the Alamo Draft House at Miller.
Oh, really?
And absolutely. And we our graduation events and a number of other events at the high schools. We're very active with ACC. We have a very active voter registration program going here at ACC. Our volunteer deputy registrars, and they're about almost 5,000 strong, we train them to register voters, but they're also our civic engagement army, because it's not enough to register to vote. If you don't follow through, then we haven't accomplished anything. And so we want them to be able to help educate people about when the elections are, where the elections are, how they vote, what's early voting, what do they need to be able to vote with an ID. And then the last is the most important. Why is it important? How do we reach people to really convey that being part of their democracy is very important? I mean, we could stop having elections, and there are a lot of countries, unfortunately, that don't have elections, and it's a lot cheaper. We've spent
Or have elections that don't matter.
Or have elections that don't matter. We spend $1 million putting on an election here in Travis County for sometimes 8, 10, 12% turnout. In the business world, if they got that kind of return, they would cancel the election. And so we really have to decide if we're going to use it. And sadly, the United States is 100th in the world in voter turnout.
Yep.
And Texas is 48th in the nation.
So why do you think that people don't vote?
I think there's a lot of reasons. I think there's a lot of cynicism about their elected officials. I think that things like redistricting, where there aren't as many competitive races, tends to dampen turnout. I think that so much of the messaging now, and especially this year, the messaging is making everybody, all the elected officials and the policy people look bad. We don't trust anybody, they're not doing anything. Well, we can have that attitude, but that's what we have to live with. We've put ourselves on the sidelines and allowed other people to make these decisions. And we're either going to be on the sidelines accepting what comes, or we're going to be in the game. And the game is voting, and the game is interacting with your elected officials, and the game is being on a city council commission or a county commission, and the game is running for office and trying to affect change. And as American citizens, we have the right to vote, but we have the responsibility as well to vote and be civically engaged.
Do you feel that our public educational systems prior to high school, when you engage with students, provides enough civic education?
No.
Civic literacy?
No.
Does your office do anything to promote greater, what we, my age, called citizenship?
Well, we do the first vote program with the legal women voters in the high schools.
But prior to the high schools?
Prior to high schools, we don't really have any programming. Our PSA contest goes down to the elementary school level. And I forgot to mention, we have a mock election that's coming up in October, and that'll go down to the elementary school level too. I mean, it's great for elementary school kids to participate in voting and then go home and talk to their parents about voting.
Right.
And so we're proud of that, but we certainly need to do more. The schools need to do more. When I was young, we got more civic engagement in the schools than we do today. And I think that that's contributing to our lower voter turnout, because we have some of the lowest turnouts in a century.
Yeah, when I talk to younger people, voting is not on the radar.
No, but it profoundly impacts their life. I mean, for young people, do you want to go to college? Can you afford college? Do you want to get the curriculum that's going to get you the job? Yep. Can you afford housing? Can you afford transportation? Do you care about the pools, the parks, and the libraries? All those decisions are being made by local governments every week.
And they don't want old geezers like you and I controlling their lives.
So they should run. They should vote and they should run.
Yes. So what are, we read about and we hear about all the problems with voting mechanisms, the omnipresence of the Russians getting into our voting machines and so forth. What is your office, what are you doing to make sure that our voting is fair and accurate?
Well, we work closely. First of all, my office is the voter registration side, and the county clerk conducts the elections. And so it's bifurcated, but we work very closely together. We work closely, obviously, with our IT division, with the county's IT division, with the Secretary of State's office, and with federal agencies. And the county clerk in our office just underwent testing for our systems, and our systems rated very high. But this isn't a static thing, it's dynamic, and we have to be doing this all the time because it's like robbing a bank. When people rob banks, we try to make them more secure. And with electronic data, we have to stay ahead of the bad guys, and we're constantly looking for ways to do that and looking for threats, and it is a scary thing. But do we want to go back to before we had electronic voting? Do we want to take our banking system down? Do we want to take all the online things that we do down? We don't want to do that. We don't want to go backwards, but we have to take seriously the threats and try to be ahead of the game.
Well, personally, I found the old machines much more engaging.
Well,
I like to close the curtain.
I grew up in Houston,
Yeah.
and we had the machines with the curtains and
Yeah.
the levers, and it was very exciting.
Yeah, it was. I mean, now you just push a button. It's not very exciting. In terms of public service, what do you why do you think it's not as popular an option, or maybe you feel it is as popular an option for younger folks to get engaged?
I think some of it is just the discourse that's happening nationally, and you hear that the applicants for foreign service are down, applicants for the FBI are down. I mean,
Right.
these agencies that are being pummeled in the press are not becoming as attractive as they have before, and I think that's the same thing with either running for office or even public policy people, because we're being vilified all the time, and it's a great thing. And if not, what's the alternative? I mean, this is the way our society works. We're not going to turn over all these public services to the private sector.
Right.
And we want them to work really well, and we want to encourage bright, innovative, creative people to these jobs. And we want people to ask, why are you doing it this way?
Yeah.
You know, how can we do it better? I mean, it's every day when I come to work, my question is how can we make this work better? And I get so much enjoyment out of working with other groups and entities to figure out better ways to deliver services.
Yep. So now that you identified you're in your 60s,
I'm out. Yes.
you're out of your 60s?
No, I'm out.
You're
yeah,
out. Oh, that's
yeah.
good to know. If you look back and you was talking to the Bruce who was still working at the Attorney General's office, has options open to him as to what he's going to do with the rest of his life, what would you say to him?
When I talk to young people, I tell them that keep an open mind and network and follow your interests, and then take advantage of opportunities that come up. My whole career has been an accident. The things that I wanted to do professionally never happened. And the great things that happened to me were kind of an accident. And I was at the right place at the right time, and somebody said, would you like to come do this? And I did, and it led to something else. And so be open to opportunities. Don't be afraid to fail. I ran a campaign in my early years, and I lost, and it was devastating.
I
But
can imagine.
in hindsight, it was a great experience, and I learned a lot from it.
So that begs the question, what is it that you would have been if you could have been what you wanted to be? There's a question in there someplace.
I wanted to do public policy behind the scenes. I always wanted to do public policy. I never thought that I would be up front being an elected official. That was kind of an accident. But I've always been very interested in public policy. How do we make these processes work better? And it's not always exciting to get in the nuts and bolts of public policy, but the deliverables are great when we can provide government at a lower cost and make it more accessible and efficient. That's what it's all about.
Yes. Well, that certainly is a challenge. So what keeps you up at night?
Well, when I was constable, the thing that kept...
Besides age. I mean,
Besides
we all stay up at night because of age.
Yeah.
What
That's
keeps
another
you
story.
up at night?
Besides constable, when I was constable, what kept me up at night was the safety of my officers, and that was they're out there at all times of day or night serving protective orders and other processes where people aren't going to be happy to receive them, and that certainly kept me up at night. And now I'm the custodian for $4.5 billion of taxpayer dollars. And what can we do to make sure that money is secure?
Yeah, that's quite a challenge.
Yes.
Is there anything I failed to ask? I have a few more questions, but is there anything that I failed to ask from your perspective?
I think you're doing fine.
Well, thank you. We can say that again.
Yes.
So, as a leader, how do you describe your leadership style?
My management style is very inclusive. I want my managers to question me. I want all of us to be testing ideas. What we don't want to do is implement something that is half-baked and that can cost a whole bunch of money for the
Yep.
taxpayers. Or when I was constable, it could cost somebody their lives. And so any solution we implement has to be very well tested out. And I have a very inclusive management style, and I'm not afraid of criticism. You have to have thick skin doing this job. But the dangerous thing is to think that you know everything, and that you veto your managers who are the subject experts in the different areas. And we don't do that. We have a very inclusive, robust conversation, sometimes even a little bit more than robust. But that's what makes our ultimate decisions that much better.
And your employees, you think, would say the same thing?
I would hope so.
Well, we did a survey.
You did a survey,
No.
okay.
No. So, if you could change one thing about your life, what would you have done?
You know, I thought about that, and I don't know that I would have changed much. It's just been fascinating watching my life roll out, and everything has been exciting.
Do we have a biopic here?
Yeah, well, like I said, it hadn't really turned out the way I thought it would, but you know, when you're in school and you think I'm going to be a doctor, I'm a lawyer, maybe you will, but more likely you won't. And 30 years from then, you can't imagine what you're going to turn out to be. I just couldn't have imagined that I would have been a constable or a tax assessor.
Yeah.
But it's worked out really well, and I feel like I've really contributed to the community well-being, and that's what we're trying to do, is make our community a little bit better. The one thing that I thought about when I was thinking about that question is that when I was younger, I thought I knew everything. I thought I knew more. And when I look at some clips of some interviews or some articles, I think, I said that, really? And as I've gotten older, I've learned to listen more and realize that I don't know everything, and that making mistakes can have big consequences, so you want to be pretty cautious going into those decision-making processes.
Yeah, particularly in the roles you've been playing.
Yes.
I mean, it's really critical.
Yeah.
So there are myths about public service. What are some of the myths that you've come across? Again, I'm interested in why people are not getting involved and what you might do, we might do, et cetera, to involve more people.
Well, we're getting rich and we're all corrupt. And
Is that true?
No, it's
Oh.
no, it's certainly not in my case. This is not a designer suit. We're not corrupt, and most of us aren't getting rich. The vast majority of people who work in public service are there for the right reasons, and they just want to make our community a little bit better. They want to serve the public. You know, how can we deliver services better and cheaper? We're all concerned about taxes, and there's so much pressure on us to figure out how to deliver services to keep the taxes down a little bit or keep them going up less. And the vast majority of people I've worked with are wonderful public servants at all levels. We may not agree with them politically, but the vast majority are there for the right reasons.
And that's a tough thing to get across to a lot of people.
It is a tough thing, and they just they're all corrupt and they check out. And it's like, what's the alternative? If you think they're corrupt, follow them closer, and if you find corruption, root it out. But step up to the plate and be more engaged. We need people who care about public policy to step up and be a part of this process and help make it better.
And I think your public image is largely that of a public servant and sort of a degree of selflessness. So I compliment you on that. That's
Well, thank you.
So my last question, and we only have a minute left, is who would you identify as your biggest role model?
Wow. Younger people in the audience are not going to know who this was, but they should. My role model was Senator Ralph Yarbrough. And Senator Yarbrough served Texas from the late 50s to 1970, and he was the first Southern senator to vote for a civil rights bill. And he ran 9 times for office and only won 3 times. But the one time when he was a U.S. senator was so impactful. He got to work with President Johnson on the Great Society and civil rights. And he took a liking to me when I first ran for office and called me every day and asked me, have I done such and such?
Wow.
And it was an incredible honor. And Senator Yarbrough used to say, do right and risk the consequences. And that's what public servants need to be doing. Politically, the decisions I have to make can be really difficult, whether they're a public policy thing or whether it's an employee issue. But you got to be guided by what you think is right.
I think that's a perfect way to end our show. Thank you very, very much.
Thank you.
Thank you for watching Civil Society, and thank you to ACCTV for producing this show. You can read more about Bruce Elfant and the issues we just discussed and about his office, and view previous episodes at nonprofitaustin.org/civil society. Thank you.